At 89 years old, I have nothing left to prove. My name is Charles Edward Miller, and for 51 years I practiced physical therapy in New York City. I worked with over 6,500 patients in private practices and public health clinics on the Upper West Side and other West Side neighborhoods. I rehabilitated bodies after accidents, surgeries, and illnesses. I gave mobility back to those who had lost it. And after more than 5 decades of observing how people recovered or lost their quality of life, I discovered something revealing. Most people didn't lose their vitality due to disease, but because of daily decisions that accumulated consequences. I'm not speaking from theory. I'm speaking from patterns I've seen repeated thousands of times. In 1978, I started noticing strange differences between patients with similar diagnoses. 2 people of the same age, with the same injury, would progress in completely different ways. I remember one specific case: 2 62-year-old men, both with a herniated disc. One recovered in 3 months, the other took over a year and came back with another injury 2 years later. Same surgery, same rehabilitation protocol, opposite results. That's when I started paying attention to what was happening outside my office. In 1985, I began to record a specific detail: their lifestyle before the injury or illness. I asked about their routine, sleep, diet, relationships. At first, my colleagues thought I was wasting my time, but the bodies told stories that the medical charts didn't show. Patients who walked regularly recovered faster. Those who maintained active social ties showed better adherence to their treatment plan. People who slept well had less inflammation and chronic pain. Those who ate a balanced diet healed more efficiently. By 1992, I had enough personal observations to understand that quality of life wasn't a result of luck, but of habits sustained over time. A 52-year-old executive was the turning point. He came to my office after back surgery. He worked out 3 times a week at an exclusive gym on the Upper East Side. He wore imported sneakers, took expensive supplements, and had a personal trainer. But he spent 12 hours a day sitting in meetings and in front of a computer. He ate quickly, slept little, and lived under constant stress. His recovery was slow and painful. 2 years later, he was back with another injury. The conclusion was simple and powerful: the body needs consistency, not isolated compensations. He thought 3 hours at the gym per week compensated for 60 hours of sitting. It didn't. The body doesn't work that way. It needs frequent movement, distributed throughout the day. It's no use doing an hour of intense exercise and then spending the rest of the day immobile. The muscles shorten, circulation decreases, the spine suffers, inflammation increases. I started recommending something that seemed ridiculous at the time: get up every 50 minutes, walk to the window, stretch your arms, climb a flight of stairs. Nothing heroic, just constant movement. The patients who followed this advice had remarkably better recoveries. Those who ignored it came back with new injuries. The second pattern was even more revealing: restorative sleep, not just sleeping but resting deeply. I had patients who claimed to get by on 4 or 5 hours, mothers who were constantly waking up for their children, professionals who worked late into the night. I began to correlate chronic pain, slow recoveries, and frequent relapses with histories of poor sleep. I remember a 58-year-old teacher. She came in with shoulder pain that hadn't improved for months. She'd had cortisone shots, taken anti-inflammatories, tried acupuncture. Nothing worked. When I asked about her sleep, she said she slept well, 6 hours a night without waking up. But when I asked if she woke up feeling rested, she hesitated. No, she woke up tired, always, always. I asked her to get a sleep study. We discovered she had sleep apnea. She wasn't waking up during the night, but her sleep was fragmented and shallow. Her body never entered the deep stages of recovery. We treated the apnea. In 6 weeks, her shoulder pain decreased by 70%, without any additional intervention on the joint itself. The body repairs itself during deep sleep. Without that process, inflammation persists, muscles don't regenerate, and the nervous system doesn't rebalance. Decades before the science of sleep became popular, I could already predict which patients would have complications based solely on how they slept. Sleeping poorly didn't seem serious, but it was eroding every system in the body. The third factor was uncomfortable because it seemed emotional, not physical. Social connection. Isolated people recovered more slowly. Patients without a support network would abandon physical therapy. Sustained isolation weakened motivation, elevated stress, and reduced adherence to treatment. I saw patients with severe injuries recover completely because they had family, friends, a community. And I saw people with minor problems deteriorate because they were alone. I remember 2 women with a broken femur, same age, 71, same surgery, admitted to the hospital the same week. One had 3 children who took turns bringing her to her sessions. She was part of a knitting circle in Riverside Park. She had friends who called every day. The other lived alone. Her children were in other states. No close friends. She spent her days watching television. The first one was walking again in 4 months. The second never regained full mobility, not because of a physical limitation, because of a lack of motivation, because of loneliness. Human connection wasn't a minor detail, it was part of the treatment. I started asking about it in the first consultations. Who do you live with? Do you have close friends? Are you part of any groups? Do you talk with someone regularly? The answers told me as much as the MRI scans. Connected patients had a better prognosis, not because connection healed injuries, but because it gave them a reason to try, to show up for their appointments, to follow the instructions, to want to get better. Loneliness, on the other hand, was a silent risk factor. It didn't appear in any medical protocol, but I saw its effects every single day. The fourth pattern frustrated me for years. Patients who followed fad diets, extreme restrictions, or unbalanced nutrition. Older people eating only simple carbohydrates while their muscle mass dwindled with age. After 50, the body needs adequate protein to maintain muscle. It needs healthy fats to reduce inflammation. It needs real nutrients, not processed products. I adjusted my own diet at 60, more vegetables, quality proteins, less refined sugar. In 2 months, my joint pain improved remarkably. Many patients didn't want to change. They trusted old advice or passing trends. They paid the price in chronic inflammation and slow recoveries. I remember a 68-year-old man who came in with chronic knee pain. He was overweight. His breakfast was white bread with butter and a glass of orange juice. For lunch, he'd have pasta or rice and beans with some meat. For dinner, a sandwich. He thought he ate well because it was all home-cooked. But it was almost all carbohydrates, little protein, little fiber, few good fats. His body was inflamed from the inside out. The knee was just the most visible symptom. I suggested gradual changes. Add an egg to his breakfast, include more greens at lunch, swap the sandwich for chicken soup. He resisted at first, said he'd always eaten that way, that he wasn't going to change at 68, but the pain wasn't getting better. After 6 months of physical therapy with no significant progress, he finally agreed to try. In 3 months he lost 10 pounds. His knee pain was cut in half, not just because he lost weight, but because the systemic inflammation was reduced. Nutrition wasn't about aesthetics, it was about function. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know what city you're watching from. Let's continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. At 89, I still see these patterns repeating. I still see people looking for quick fixes to problems that took decades to form. I still see bodies crying for help in ways that traditional medicine can't interpret. But I also see something different now. I see more people paying attention, asking questions, wanting to understand, and that gives me hope. because the difference between reaching 80 with vitality or deteriorating prematurely isn't usually in our genes. It's in the small choices accumulated over decades, choices that are still within your reach. The fifth factor was almost invisible: chronic stress and constant worry. People who were retired with no serious financial problems but trapped in permanent anxiety. Sustained stress tensed their muscles, altered their posture, generated pain, and hindered recovery. Emotional tension manifested physically. It didn't seem urgent, but it eroded them year after year. I saw this clearly in a 64-year-old patient. She came in with chronic neck pain. She'd already had dozens of physical therapy sessions at other clinics. She took muscle relaxers. She wore a neck brace. Nothing worked. When I started treating her, I noticed her muscles were permanently contracted, not from an injury but from tension. She worried about everything, about her adult children, about her grandchildren, about her neighbor, about the news on TV, about things she couldn't control. Her body was living in a constant state of alert. Her muscles never relaxed. The pain was real, but the cause wasn't physical. I suggested she seek psychological help. She resisted. She said she wasn't crazy. I explained that it wasn't about being crazy, but about learning to let go of what wasn't in her hands. She finally agreed. She started therapy. In 2 months, her neck pain decreased more than it had in a year of physical treatment. The body holds what the mind can't process. For decades, I watched these 5 patterns repeat: frequent movement, restorative sleep, social connection, balanced nutrition, and stress management. They weren't secrets. They weren't complex. But they were ignored by most people. And the most painful proof of this was my own younger brother. We lived together for 35 years in an apartment in Morningside Heights. He was 3 years younger than me. He saw my work up close. He heard my observations. He knew the patterns. But he didn't adopt a single one of the recommendations. He moved very little due to aches and pains he never addressed. He'd say it was just a little discomfort, that it would pass. It never did. He slept poorly for years due to untreated insomnia. He refused help. He'd say he'd always slept that way. He stuck to traditional eating habits high in fried foods and refined flours. He loved white bread and butter, pasta every day, cake for an afternoon snack. He worried constantly about other people's problems. He carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. I tried to talk to him many times. He would listen, agree, but never change. He'd say he'd start tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. He lived to be 76. Many would say that was a good, long life. But I watched 20 years of progressive decline, loss of mobility, chronic pain, growing dependence. It wasn't an abrupt end. It was a long, slow draining of vitality. In his last 5 years, he barely left the house. He needed help with simple tasks. He spent his days in an armchair watching television. It wasn't the life he deserved. It wasn't the life he could have had. I'm not talking about living more years. I'm talking about living those years with autonomy, energy, and joy. At 89, I live alone in my apartment on the Upper West Side. I cook my own meals. I make scrambled eggs for breakfast, a big salad for lunch. I'll cook chicken with vegetables for dinner. Nothing fancy, just real food. I walk through Riverside Park every morning. I don't run. I don't do intense exercises. I just walk. 30 minutes, every day, rain or shine. I greet my neighbors. I watch the birds. I feel my body move. I'm part of a book club that meets every Thursday at the local library branch. There are 8 of us. We discuss books. We laugh. We disagree. We connect. It's not about the books. It's about the bond. I call my nieces and nephews every week. I don't wait for them to call. I call. I ask how they are. I listen to their stories. I keep the connection alive. I sleep 8 hours a night. I go to bed at 10 p.m. I wake up at 6 a.m. No alarm clock. The body knows when it's rested. I don't take sleeping pills. I don't watch TV before bed. I read for a few minutes. I turn off the light. I sleep. and I maintain a habit I adopted in 1982. I get up every hour to move. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. Reading, watching something, talking. Every hour I stand up. I walk to the window. I stretch my arms. I do a few calf raises. 2 minutes. Then I go back to what I was doing. People think it's strange, but my body thanks me. At 89, I have no chronic pain. I don't take pain medication. I don't depend on anyone for my daily activities. I don't consider myself special. I consider myself consistent. I've seen thousands of bodies recover or deteriorate. I've said goodbye to beloved patients. I buried my brother. And I'm still here. Not because of luck, because of repeated decisions. My message isn't to change everything at once. It's not to turn your life upside down. It's to choose one of the 5 pillars, just one. Move frequently, sleep deeply, cultivate real connections, eat a balanced diet, let go of unnecessary stress, just one, and stick with it. Because in my experience, the difference between reaching 80 with vitality or deteriorating prematurely isn't usually in our genes. It's in the small choices, accumulated over decades. Choices you can still make. I saw 50-year-olds with the bodies of 70-year-olds and 70-year-olds with the bodies of 50-year-olds. The difference wasn't in what they inherited. It was in what they chose. Every day, bodies told me stories. Stories of neglect, stories of care, stories of regret, stories of transformation. And the most important story was always the same. It's never too late to start, but the sooner, the better. I'm 89 years old. I don't know how much time I have left, nobody does. But I know that every day I wake up without pain, that I walk without help, that I think clearly, that I laugh with friends, is a gift I built with daily choices over decades. And you're still here. You still have time. You can still choose. The question I leave you with isn't a medical one. It's personal. You're still here. What are you going to do about it?